Okay.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third ICLEI webinar on Cities and Regions Talanoa Dialogues, taking place today on Wednesday, 18th April, 10 o'clock Central European Summer Time. My name is Jisun Hwang. I am Senior Climate Advocacy and Policy Officer at ICLEI World Secretariat, and I will be a panelist as well as the facilitator of today's webinar. And on behalf of ICLEI, I would like to extend my heartfelt welcome to all of you. Before we start our webinar, let me briefly give you a technical introduction to today's webinar. First of all, you are automatically muted as you logged in, and I would like to kindly ask you to please stay muted till the end of all the presentations to ensure a smooth proceeding. And secondly, there is a box where you can type in questions at any time during this webinar, so please feel free to use it, and we will take your questions and we will table it at the end of the presentations. Last but not least, this webinar is being recorded in keeping with the principles of openness and transparency. Upon closure of this webinar, all the registered participants will be able to receive the recording of this webinar as well as the PPT slides that will be shown to you today. Now with that, let me move on to introducing my fellow panelist, Mr. Yunus Arikan. He is the head of global policy and advocacy of ICLEI, and he's based at the ICLEI World Secretariat in Bonn, Germany. He is also the local governments and municipal authorities constituency focal point to the UNFCCC. Now with that, let us get started with today's webinar. This is a table of contents of today's webinar. We will have three sections today. First of all, on the UN Bonn Climate Change Conference, and secondly, on the Talanoa dialogue during the subsidiary body's 48 sessions. And last but not least, we will have updates on the cities and regions Talanoa dialogues. The first and third part will be presented by Yunus, and I will be presenting the Talanoa dialogue, section 2 of today's webinar. Now with that, I give the floor to Yunus. Yunus, over to you.
Thank you, Jisun. This webinar is just 2 weeks before the UN regular climate conference, which this time is taking place at the end of April and the first 10 days of May. Through this webinar, we thought it would be good to go through the agenda first and to see the whole atmosphere. And then, as Jisun mentioned, we will focus more on the Talanoa dialogues, where Jisun will take us in terms of updates from the presidency and all the other preparations. Let's recall the key events taking place is, first, we have regular negotiations, the scientific and technological advice subsidiary body and subsidiary body for implementation. This means that as the LGMA, the constituency of local governments and municipal authorities, we will be able to submit our inputs at the opening or closing if time allows, and if the sessions are open for interventions of, again, observers during the specific agenda items, we can intervene. There are a couple of agenda items that may be relevant, like, for example, there will be research dialogue, so we will go to that ones later on. The opening and closings are by default at the first and the last days of the sessions. Compared to COP, let's recall this time there is no 2 zones because the World Conference Center is large enough to accommodate all the participation. So we will all be in one place. So depending on the presence of our delegations, local government and municipal authorities, we will coordinate these interventions. There is also the negotiations on the Paris Agreement, which is the complete progress on the Paris Agreement workbook. This is time to time closed to observers. They have a bit more specific sessions, and we'll try to engage as much as possible as well. throughout the 2 weeks, there will be a couple of mandated events. The most important ones are the technical expert meetings on mitigation and adaptation. We will go through the details later on. During these 2 weeks, especially in the first week, there is a number of dialogues, which is either one-off event that was a result of a decision on previous sessions, or side events, but a bit different than the others. One of them is on loss and damage. There is a dialogue on action for climate empowerment. There will be a side event of the Nairobi Work Program as a follow-up from the previous session on human settlement. So there is a series of agendas on that front. There will be a discussion on Talanoa dialogues, and Jisun will take us through that. And as a typical UN conference, UN climate conference, we as observers will also have our own engagements. Key ones are the side events. ICLEI side event will be focusing on the update on cities and regions Talanoa dialogues. This will be on 2nd of May, Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Another partner of LGMA constituency, UCLG, will also have another side event with the Women Constituency Organization on the 7th of Monday at 4:45. Throughout the first week, ICLEI will have its own exhibit, which will be an opportunity for us to circulate our updates, our documents and initiatives, and any partners of LGMA, in case they have any documentations, feel free to approach us. We can do our best to display it in our exhibit. And if you would like to meet with ICLEI, feel free to visit ICLEI exhibit during this period. We will not organize morning briefings, but depending on the availability of our delegations, we may consider to have a couple of closed meetings on Friday or Saturday, the day before the Talanoa dialogue, which may help us to get together with our colleagues who are attending the conference. Next slide, please. Technical expert meetings have specific themes, and the value is that these outcomes of these processes will also feed into the Marrakesh Partnership events at the end of the year at COP, so that there is a synergy between the technical expert meetings here now and the Marrakesh Partnership events at the COP. This year the theme is on circular economies and waste reuse. We have seen in the agenda that there is a vision to engage subnational governments, especially on waste to energy projects. We have reached out to Secretariat how they would like to engage. At the moment, we don't know, but there may be other partners or members who have been approached. It would be good if any of you who are approached can update us so that we are aware who is attending this. And then the other meeting on adaptation is on vulnerable groups and communities. And both of these sessions will be an opportunity to feed into during the Talanoa dialogue as well. That is the spirit of this technical examination process and meetings. With this, let's now focus more on the Talanoa dialogues, and Jisun will take us through the whole updates and the preparations.
Thank you, Yunus. As Yunus mentioned, I would like to focus on the latest updates on the Talanoa dialogue, especially that will take place during the April-May sessions, starting from the 30th of April in Bonn, Germany. Since we did our last monthly webinar, there's been a new document issued by the presidencies, which is a guidance document to parties, which contains specific questions per each of the three big Talanoa questions of where are we, where do we want to go, and how do we get there. And it is important for us to also be familiar with these questions, because we will be seated side by side with parties during the May Talanoa dialogues, and then it will be important for us to be able to know what the parties were encouraged to discuss and and we can provide our side of the views during those in-depth discussions on the 6th of May. Now, there is a particular reference to the role of local governments in the document for question 3. How do we get there? So, to be exact, the questions go like what actions could be taken by national and local governments in order to contribute to the vision of increasing ambition and achieving the objectives of the Paris Agreement. So we believe at ICLEI that this is a crucial question, and also this is a faithful interpretation of the multi-level governance vision laid out in the preamble of the Paris Agreement, which recognizes the importance of engagement of government at all levels in addressing climate change. Now, so it will be very important for us to know that the presidencies also see eye to eye with us on this importance of multi-level climate governance on this, and the question 3 of how do we get there being one of the most important points of mapping out the methodologies of how we actually achieve the Paris Agreement below 2-degree goal, as well as to increase ambition as we update the nationally determined contributions. So it is important to keep in mind that both the LGMA constituency as well as the presidencies will then see eye to eye on the importance of bottom-up initiatives and the engagement of government at all levels for multi-level climate governance as we engage in this Talanoa. Let me go into further details of the newly issued guidance document of the presidencies. Now, this document has a title of Guidance to Parties, but it has a number of references to the role of non-party stakeholders, and local and regional governments being one of party stakeholders. It is important for us to also keep in mind what is being asked of parties to consider when it comes to their relations and cooperative initiatives that they undertake in cooperation with non-party stakeholders. So there are 2 specific references to non-party stakeholders for question 1, where are we? And 1 each for question 2 and 3. And I believe the question 1, where are we, is also important, and in the sense that the presidency is asking what actions from NPS are there out there to address climate change, which is a question that is addressed by most of the LGMA constituency submissions as well. What is more interesting is the second element of the first question, the guidance question by the presidencies, which actually addresses the partnerships between governments and non-party stakeholders. And now let's look at this governments, because it doesn't really specify which level of government it is. Depending on how one interprets this, it can mean just national governments, but at the same time, if we broaden our perspective, it can also mean different levels of government. And local and regional governments being under this umbrella of governments, and as well as at the same time being non-party stakeholders, it is important for us to actually highlight this important role played by local and regional governments, because we are the bridge between governments and non-party stakeholders, and we are the ones who are uniquely positioned to raise the ambition and to also undertake activities that are in line with the visions set by national governments based on multi-level governance approaches, as well as from the non-party stakeholders' perspective, we can also play a key role in leading the enhancement of ambition. For the second question of where do we want to go, this is more about increasing ambition kind of a question. And again, we see this phrasing of governments and non-party stakeholders. So again, this is open to interpretations, but what is important is for us local and regional governments, we are the key players that straddles these 2 camps, because we are situated in both of these groups. So as local and regional governments, we do play a role in setting up policies and plans at the local and regional levels, which should help national governments increase ambition. And at the same time, as non-party stakeholders, we also play a role in mobilizing the momentum towards increasing more ambitious climate actions at the local and regional levels. So that's also important for us to keep in mind. And last but not least, the question 3 is on how do we get there? So this is more about the roadmap and methodologies and a step-by-step approach of actually achieving the Paris Agreement long-term temperature goal. And here we see partnerships between parties and non-party stakeholders being discussed here. And the end goal is what we strive towards together, which is to increase ambition and to achieve objectives of the Paris Agreement. And the emphasis on new engagements or partnerships between parties and non-party stakeholders. And for us, it is also a good signal for us to be motivated to pursue new and more ambitious partnerships between parties and non-party stakeholders, which means for us, local and regional governments, it means strengthening the enabling environment provided by a multi-level governance framework that will then create a positive feedback loop between the national and subnational policy responses for implementing NDCs. So again, these questions are very good signals for us to keep in mind as we prepare for the May session's Talanoa dialogues. So we see both it is being detected by the submissions emanating from the LGMA constituency as well as from the guidance questions to parties provided by the presidencies. We see lots of evidence of the importance of bottom-up initiatives and multi-level climate governance. So these are really good signs. Now, as you are all aware, there has been submissions made by the deadline of the 2nd of April. And lots of submissions have been made, and all of them are made available on the Talanoa Dialogue website. And then here we listed the submissions made at parties and the members of the LGMA constituency and the larger LGMA community, meaning that members, not just members, but also partners and the LGMA allies. So for the parties, there is State of Palestine, St. Lucia on behalf of CARICOM, the Caribbean community, China, Fiji, Saudi Arabia on behalf of the Arab group, Indonesia, Australia, the EU, and Ethiopia. I would like to draw your attention to the submission of Indonesia because it actually contains a specific reference to the role of local governments and some best practices and the current initiatives that are being undertaken at the local governments level. And Indonesia is one of the countries where ICLEI's the cities and regions Talanoa dialogues also took place in early March, which actually has been reflected in the national Indonesian submission as well as one of the cases. So this is as I said, is a positive feedback loop being in display, where local and regional levels initiatives are also feeding into the national planning and the need for promoting multi-level governance being also acknowledged and encouraged from the national government side. For the LGMA community members, partners, and allies, we have a lot of submissions. ICLEI C40, Global Covenant, UN Habitat, GIZ ICLEI trilateral submission was also made, and the cities and regions Talanoa dialogues was also submitted by ICLEI. Climate Chance, FNDVC, CFLA, SLOCAT, PPMC, UITP, California, we are still in, and GABC. US States Alliance, Future Ocean Alliance, whose submission was supported by ICLEI and FMDV and UITP. Now, I tried to provide an initial synthesis of selected LGMA submissions, and the end goal of doing this exercise was to try to see what the commonalities are and what the major streams are when it comes to the messaging that can be detected from the submissions from the LGMA members as well as partners. And then indeed there are commonalities and also important messaging that we can actually see emanating from these submissions. So starting from ICLEI submissions for the question 1, for example, the question 1 is about where are we? So this is more like a setting the scene question. This is about taking the stock of the current landscape landscape of climate actions at the local and regional levels, and what is going on well and what is not going on well. So what we can see from here is that there are many data available, there are many evidence available that says cities and regions are indeed taking a lead role in driving ambitious climate actions. And at the same time, we are one of the biggest energy users, we are one of the biggest emitters, and at the same time, we are one of the most ambitious ones taking action. And these are all quite evident from the submissions from all the LGMA partners and members. And for question number 2, which is the ambition question of where do we want to go, there are many instances where members of the LGMA constituency actually talk about this concrete and as well as reachable visions of multi-level governance and climate neutrality, and supported by the means of implementation such as finance and capacity building. So at the same time, we are seeing lots of common messages that are being sent from members of the LGMA constituencies that we have this vision that we need to get there, and there are ways to get there, which is addressed by the question number 3, which is how do we get there. And this question also has elicited many responses regarding the methodologies and the step-by-step roadmap related actions. So lots of different projects like green climate cities methodologies and the other MRV methodologies, and the need for harmonizing reporting and strengthening the integrated MRV, for example, are being highlighted, and sectoral actions on energy, building, transport, waste management, for example, as have been addressed as a way to highlight the details of how we actually achieve the goals that we try to get from the question to how do we where do we want to go. And for the city and regions Talanoa dialogues, for example, it is quite unique in its emphasis on the new urban agenda's role in achieving NDCs as well. So therefore, urbanization and the sustainable development should go hand in hand, which should feed into achieving NDCs as well under the Paris Agreement. And initial experiences from cities from Indonesia, Philippines, Norway are also listed as examples of these actions being actually implemented and being initiated through different initiatives. Now, for the Talanoa dialogue at the SB48, there are different Talanoa dialogue sessions, starting from opening and in-depth discussions, followed by report back and the closing meeting. And the date and time are coming from the overview schedule released by the Secretariat, which I believe could be updated or could stay the same, but the reporting back time, for example, is on Tuesday lunchtime, and the exact time is to be determined. But as you can see, the opening and report back closing meeting are pretty much straightforward. What is most important and has the longest time slot is the in-depth discussions on the Talanoa 3 questions, which will be on Sunday, the 6th of May, which has an all-day slot. Now, the format of this has been also introduced in previous webinars as well. There will be 6 parallel groups meeting that day, taking up the 3 questions one by one, each by 2.5 hours. And each group will have, each of the parallel groups will have 35 members on the table, 30 from parties and 5 from non-party stakeholders. And all of the participants will share one positive and one challenging story. And for the non-party stakeholders engagement, there were 33 seats for accredited constituencies and 33 seats for non-accredited initiatives, partnerships, or groups. And then all of those expression of interests have been applied by the 29th of March. And based on this, we have now a list And then this list that I am now showing you is the members and partners and allies of the LGMA constituency that will be now taking part on the 6th of May in-depth discussions of the Talanoa dialogues. So if you look at the entities that are represented here, the City of Paris under 2 coalition, GABC, Cities and Regions, Talanoa Dialogues, C40, CDP, California, Mexico City, Global Covenant, and Transport Decarbonization Alliance, FMDB CCFLA, the City of Quito, and ICLEI. Now, for the updates on the Cities and Regions Talanoa Dialogues, I give the floor to Yunus. Yunus, over to you.
Thank you, Jisun. As you can recall, our last webinar was a month ago in March, and since then there were progress with the first sets of 25 sessions, and there were additional updates, and that's how we are presenting this information in this session, in this part. For the first 25 sessions, first of all, we are happy to inform our colleagues that they are able to use the Talanoa Dialogue logo, and UNFCCC Secretariat is also entering these gradually to the official Talanoa calendar. And I think that is once again showing the importance of collective collaboration, that we have been ready and we have shown our list, and I think that was a positive, that was very positively received by the Secretariat and the presidency. There were a couple of events taking place. For example, Committee of the Regions, they will also be part of the non-state actor session next week in Brussels, but Committee of the Regions had the Environment Commission with a specific position paper, which has a very strong text on Talanoa dialogues, and this will be now finalized on the plenary of the Committee of the Regions on the 16th and 17th of May. Obviously, this will be after the Talanoa dialogue, but Committee of the Regions is also showing that they are very actively involved in this process. In the Resilient Cities Congress here in Bonn, which will happen next week, there will be a special Talanoa dialogue and a dinner at the City Hall of Bonn, and on the 27th of April. This will be joined by UNFCCC Executive Secretary Patricia Espinosa and the German Minister of Environment Secretary Johann Flassbach, and we will have a number of local government representatives. I think this is again just before the official negotiations. It's an opportunity for us to provide input and test some of those ideas. We're expecting a number of negotiators, such as the special envoy of Indonesia, Rahmat Witolar, as well, so that this preparatory meeting, as typically in the case of resident cities every year, helps us to achieve our goals during the official sessions. Malmö is advancing together with Global Covenant of Mayors. They are preparing for a session on the 23rd of May. The importance is that this will be an opportunity to influence or inform the ministers of energy and technology, which do not necessarily have to be involved in the climate agenda so far. So the outcome of Malmö would we hope that the other departments or the other governmental authorities will also be being informed about the climate debate and take into account the engagement of local and regional governments. This is also a follow-up from cities IPCC process. In Canada, the date is fixed on the 20th of June in Montreal. There will be the Talanoa session at the ICLEI World Congress. And we also have received the confirmation of the engagement of Environment Canada, which is the coordinator of the Canadian federal government in the climate negotiators. They're also eager to join this. This was strengthening our efforts that all the Talanoa dialogues, the minimum criteria is that it should be multi-level, that all levels of governments are joining this discussion. In between, we also have received additional updates that were not planned originally, but it is evolving. That's also what our expectation is, that while we have sent our first 25 list we will probably be updating this in May, and another round could come up in midsummer. FMD and ICLEI, together with cities of Almada and Cascais, they attended the Future Ocean Alliance Talanoa Dialogue in Lisbon on the 28th of March. This was also a nice experience for us to convey our messaging, and then actually these contributions were also captured in the submission of the Future Ocean Alliance into the Talanoa. That is also showing the benefit of getting engaged in other stakeholders' activities, so that our voices, our proposals are heard and reflected there. The UN Habitat Executive Director, Maimuna Sharif, attended the first actually this was the first regional Talanoa dialogue. This was focusing on Africa. It was in Nairobi. It was part of the Africa Climate Week, and this happened on the 13th of April. So as the special partner of the Cities and Regions Talanoa dialogue, and as a former mayor who has attended the pre-COP, I think that was a very valuable engagement of Maimuna Sharif, that she again channeled our priorities and concerns and contributions. Of course, Africa is a continent which is growing on urbanization, and in this first regional dialogue, having the voice of cities there heard is also important. Just yesterday, the Committee of the European Municipalities and Regions, they had their dialogue in Torres Vedras with departments from the national government as well. That was an additional new event. We are expecting that there will be a Cities IPCC Legacy Conference in Mexico City on the June 4 to 6, and they are also trying to design it as a type of, as in the mode of Talanoa dialogues, since Cities IPCC is also preparing to make its submissions by the 9th of October. I think having an active engagement with the Mexican government would be very helpful. Mexican government has always been supportive of local agendas and local positions of LGMA, especially from Cancun onwards, and they have always been the closest allies of within the delegation. So we expect this meeting will be an additional opportunity. Let's recall, during the year, Energy First, they will also have another session in Mexico City in October. We're also hearing another important actor, State of Sao Paulo in Brazil, is discussing with ICLEI regional office in South America's secretariat to explore the possibility of convening another Talanoa dialogue. We are aware Brazil is one of those countries who are going through a national election this year, so timing, and the same goes to Mexico, also other countries. We are recommending our partners and colleagues to be careful about the election agendas. In overall terms, our recommendation is that having these Talanoa sessions after the elections are over can be much more easy, and since the responsibilities are much more clear, and we can also be free from the domestic political debates, because let's not forget, Talanoa dialogues is not an easy agenda, and if we are not well prepared, it can get out of our control easily. So we should do our best that we are focused to our discussions, that we are approaching to a positive spirit and constructive spirit. So we are doing our best with our partners that these sessions are fruitful and productive, that is in line with the spirit of Talanoa. This is an overall, I think, as a summary of this session. Jisun, maybe now, if you like, we can go to the Q&A session with our participants.
Thank you, Yunus, for your updates from the Cities and Regions Talanoa dialogues. I see no questions yet typed into the questions box. Ladies and gentlemen, now we have seen all the presentations, and now it is your time to address any questions or go deeper into some of the slides that you would like to focus on. If you would like to raise any questions, just raise your hand, or you can just type in your questions, and I will read from there. Well, I see no questions or hand raised at the moment. Yunus, is there anything that you would like to add on based on what you just presented?
Yeah. Just referring to the slides you mentioned, maybe we can go to the table that you have prepared, Jisun, I just wanted to highlight that these, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I'm not counting, there are 7 submissions. As you have seen, there were more. This and the intermediate analysis was initially prepared when, as soon as this was shared with ICLEI directly, or with that we can access. We know there are additional submissions that we have not found the time to go through all of them yet. They just wanted to flag that this doesn't mean that other submissions are not important or we're not taking them seriously. This chart is based on the work that we have done as of 10th of April, which was just around the Easter break that we have been working around. And the second point, just if you go up one slide before, when you were mentioning about, again, the party submissions, as you said, Indonesia was very important because Indonesia almost exactly followed the guidance from the presidency. But let's recall these files that are on the homepage is also real time, which means that there may be submissions that came after the deadline of 2nd of April. I think one of them is EU, and I just had a look at this EU submission. It's around 30 pages, which is significantly long, but it also had a reference to the value of the Covenant of Mayors in the Europe, and I think we should also praise and that is again reflecting the importance of being actively involved in the delegations. We will go through these country or party submissions in more detail so that we'll try to catch up what has been stated or reported by others as well. That will also be something that we should be taking into account seriously.
Thank you, Yunus. In the meantime, I received 4 questions now. 3 from Rebecca and 1 from Susanna. Maybe we deal with Rebecca's question first, which is about the Talanoa dialogue submission. So what is the process for submission of for dialogue before and after? And then the other 2 questions from Rebecca also deals with some other aspects of the Talanoa dialogue. Would it be good to have the country's UNFCCC national focal point in attendance when you organize a Talanoa dialogue? And the last question from Rebecca is about do we need to brand it as a Talanoa dialogue for it to be included as such? Now, I will provide my comments, and then Yunus, maybe you can add to that. So for the submissions, the first deadline has elapsed. It was till the 2nd of April, and now we are having this second and last deadline for this year, which is the 29th of October. So whenever you organize a Talanoa dialogue at the local level, at the regional level, within your area of operation, basically, and then the Talanoa dialogue is to be organized by answering the 3 questions of where are we, where do we want to go, and how do we get there. And then once these are submitted through the Talanoa dialogue portal set up by the UNFCCC Secretariat, then the submissions are synthesized, and they are captured in a synthesis document that is to be prepared by the Secretariat. And the ones that have been submitted by the 2nd of April are now being synthesized by the Secretariat to be prepared prior to the in-depth discussions of the Talanoa dialogue on 6th of May. So that would be my take on the submissions question. And for the national focal point invitation question, I believe it would be desirable to have the national focal point. It doesn't necessarily have to be that national focal point alone or that person only. It's what's important is to have a multi-level climate dialogue. So it is important that at least at the local and regional level, we tried to invite as much as possible the national level representatives in order for us to have a dialogue on what the national government can provide as an enabling environment for local and regional climate action, and also provide feedback from the local and regional government side as to what is already happening and what can be further achieved through cooperation with the national government side on promoting multi-level governance for achieving NDC goals. So that will be my answer for the national focal point question. And last but not least, for the branding, it is recommended that once you set up your Talanoa dialogue, that if you so wish, it can be also part of the citizen and regions Talanoa dialogues. And at the same time, for the coordinating purposes, you also have to inform the secretariat for the use of the logo, the branding that is also designated by the presidency, and they cross-check it based on the secretariat will then cross-check it based on the list that they have. But more on this, Yunus can also further comment on.
Yeah, one just additional point. There is no direct relation between convening a dialogue and making a submission. So don't think that you cannot make any submission if you don't have any dialogue organizer. There is no direct correlation, and the deadlines, as Jisun mentioned, is the fact that if you miss the deadline, your text can still appear on the web page of the Talanoa dialogue, but it wouldn't be taken into account in the secretariat's summary report. Because they are making a synthesis, so and of course it's always valuable, but it's just a question of that if you have it in time, it's going to be much more digested by others.
Thank you. And the other question is from Susanna, which is about, is there any available seats to attend the Talanoa dialogue meetings in Bonn? As I mentioned, the application of the expression of interest in attending it had the deadline of 29th of March, and based on this list of attendees have been confirmed, and then here what we see is the list of attendees coming from the LGMA larger LGMA community. Yunus?
The one thing that is here you can see in this list, and actually there was a bit more further list that was revised in another slide. So when we send you the link to the PowerPoint, you will see this other names as well. We have been in touch with Secretariat that for the cities and regions Talanoa dialogues, they are waiting for our final name. This morning we have circulated an update to LGMA. We are looking for applications from those who have been organizing the Talanoa dialogues. So feel free. I don't know who else would submit the names, Susanna, but we can see who would be the best, or let's say how we can work on it. So feel free to approach us. NRG Foresti is one of the first organizations who have announced a Talanoa dialogue in Mexico. Therefore, I think you should of course be available to, if you have still an interest, you can send your names. I don't know whether others will send, so let's see.
Thank you, Yunus. Susanna has a follow-up question as a clarification. So the list that we see here is to take part in the meeting, but only for attending. So I believe what Susanna is asking is, these people are taking part in a meeting, which is going to be a parallel group discussion of the 6 groups on all 3 questions for the whole day on the 6th of May. So if you're one of these people, for example, on this list, it means you you share, you have to intervene, you have to share your stories, one positive, one challenging, when it comes to implementing NDCs from the constituency or initiative that you represent. So it's not going to be like a panel discussion where you have audience and the panel members. Each and every one of people here are going to be the speakers, basically, or presenters representing their group or constituency or initiative. So I hope that answers your question. Is there anything you would like to add, Yunus?
Well, we mentioned today there is a webinar of the presidency at 5 p.m. Central European Summer Time, and this is especially the reason of this webinar is to guide us, all the participants, to share about their plans, how to conduct this. Maybe once we listen to this webinar, we can also ask this question there, but afterwards maybe it will be easier for us to respond some of those specific questions because it's not in our hands. And as Jisun mentioned, this is a special meeting. How they would allow audience, we don't know whether there will be any possibility. It's also related to the design of the logistics of this session. So let's wait for additional updates today and onwards, and then we will see.
Right, because Susanna just added an additional clarification, so this will be a closed door meeting. I would like to second what Yunus just said, which is we don't really know the exact formatting of the meeting as yet, but we know that only through this application process, only the selected individuals are then to be able to present their stories at the in-depth discussion sessions. So as Yunus mentioned, it'll be also good to see what further information will be shared at the presidency webinar today at 5 o'clock Central European Summer Time. Now, there's a new question from Rebecca, which is about ICLEI Resilient Cities and World Congress. So she will be attending it, and the question is, can I attend or rather observe Talanoa dialogues happening at these sessions? Yunus?
The Talanoa dialogue at dinner on the 27th is an invitation only, and there is also an additional sessions in the Resident Cities Congress, so you can attend these ones, Rebecca. And also in the World Congress we will have a specific discussion on Canada, but again it will be Canada specific, but there will be international observers. We will work with how this will be designed. Again, this depends on the logistics, but we are doing our best that as much as possible we can share the experience, so that other regions or organizations who are planning to host their Talanoa dialogues can be inspired from the experience of these existing meetings or ongoing events.
Right. At the moment, I don't see any further questions and no hands raised. Should there be any other further questions or comments, maybe Ines, you can start maybe providing your closing comments.
Well, yes, let's recall this Talanoa dialogue is a unique experience, and after listening Jisun's summary, I think first of all we have to make use of all communication channels to express our support and welcome the leadership of the presidency, both into the style and the design, and also the way they are guiding, especially the parties as well. And I think this is important that this inclusiveness is kept. And I'm very happy to hear also so many parties already making submissions, very critical ones. This is important. This shows the interest. And once again, as we have been doing this webinars, and we will continue every month again, let's recall that every third Wednesday we will repeat these webinars. For us as ICLEI, as the focal point of LGMA, the dialogues that will take place at home, which is the cities and regions Talanoa dialogues with the respective national governments and other departments, of the country, in addition to climate change, especially including urbanization, is as important as the 6th of May. This is critical because while we know there will be things to change in the UNFCCC, but the real change will come up from the capitals. And if we can convince a number of countries that by the time they reach the COP in Katowice, that they say that because of the Talanoa dialogues, they have now updated their NDC, that there is more visibility or engagement of local action or local and regional governments, I think that will be the success story. And this will not come directly from the discussions here in Bonn, but this will come from the discussion we will have at countries and the regions. Therefore, I encourage once again all our colleagues joining this call to stay in close collaboration with us. We will be sharing updates. We will release new information. Feel free to promote the Cities and Regions Talanoa Dialogue homepage, the documents, the guidance. Maybe Jisun, you can go to the website once again. We didn't put it there, but you can be aware that we now have all the resources. If you go to the website of the Talanoa Dialogues, it's not easy to find the submissions, for example. But now in the Cities and Regions Talanoa website, if you go to the resources, you can find all the submissions of the LGMA directly with their links and documents. We're trying to do our best to speed up access to information and also enhance our visibility. So, and once again, there is not too many organizations or communities who are so much prepared and well advancing in such ways into this process, and we are definitely proud to say that the LGMA constituency is one of the most well prepared to this process. Therefore, I encourage all our colleagues to make use of the website, make use of the Talanoa Dialogue logo, and to make sure that we are collectively working in this field, because that is making our success, let's say, expanded and strengthened, and that is making others to have a much important discussion with us. So the more they see that we are collectively working on this and are so well prepared, they take us more seriously. That is my concluding remarks overall.
Thank you, Yunus. Can you see the screen of the resources page of the Talanoa Dialogue at the moment? Okay, so yes, so I would like to just add a bit to what Yunus mentioned. ICLEI, as the lead facilitator of the Cities and Regions Talanoa Dialogues, have been preparing this resources page, and we've been updating it on a regular basis. So from this website, you can get a lot of insight and the current information on the Talanoa Dialogue of the presidencies, and what we at the LGMA constituencies is also working on, starting from the Talanoa Dialogue information. And on the background page, I especially recommend you to go to these background as well, which has a lot of knowledge products on the importance of multilevel governance and how it works, including the importance of MRV, which is in line with the enhanced framework for transparency of action and support under Article 13 of the Paris Agreement. So this background has information that is relevant for that, and also submissions that you can also find here, as well as the webinars. The past webinars also see the PPTs and YouTube links, as well as there are further readings that provide updates on the press coverages and their blogs. So with that, I would like to...
Jisun, if you go to the submissions once again on the same screen now, it would be good if you take through this other link that at the beginning, which is for each question, we have provided the links to the UNFCCC. Just show, I think, if once you click there, that you go to the landing page of the UNFCCC, and we can open this, and then there you will see how submissions are displayed. You see, and you can take us through that, how they can search all the submissions, and as you have seen here, it is breaking up according to the updates from presidency or inputs from presidency, input from parties, and input from non-party stakeholders. And if you click in each of it, then you So scroll down the menu, then it's expanded. Just show once. Yeah. No. Yeah. As you see, the party submissions, and if you close this, or if you go down again, you click and you see all those with the links and all the others. So as you see, it is not easy to find what our community has submitted. You can go and search, and you can extract. But if you go back to our own resources page, Jisun, here, and as we have said, this is updated gradually. The more we receive the information, also the more we have the chance to update that. We have directly linked those submissions so that it is much easy to find what ICLEI or all the LGMA members have said into this process. And that's why we encourage our colleagues to make use of the space, keep us informed so that we can update them and inform them. If you go down to the web page down, Jisun, go down, yeah, you see the Cities for Talanoa is also automatically tracking this Cities for Talanoa hashtag, and whenever you make a tweet on the Cities for Talanoa or Regions for Talanoa, or the second hashtag as well, that is also automatically shown in this part. So this is again an opportunity for you to expand your messaging. These are additional things that we recommend you to take into account.
Thank you, Yunus. So with that, I believe we close our webinar today, and then we look forward to meeting with you once again after the SB48. This webinar is now closed. Thank you all for joining us.